Everything we discuss is then leaked to the paper. That's not appropriate.
而且我们也不是那样进行的。
And that's not how the way the conversation was
如
conducted.
果有诚心，咱们就用一个互相尊重的态度来进行很好的沟通。
If there is
否则这个结果就不好说了。
If there is sincerity on your part,
free and open and frank dialogue, and that is what we will continue to have. We will continue to look to work constructively together, but there will be things we will disagree on, and we will have to
也可以建设性，但是
创造条件，创造条件。
Let's create the conditions first.
好，好。
In a vote of 62 to 37, with the backing of a dozen Republican senators, the narrowly divided chamber voted Wednesday to advance a bill that protects the right to same-sex marriage.
The yeas are 62.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer.
But today, the Senate is taking a truly bold step forward in the march towards greater justice, greater equality, by advancing the Respect for Marriage Act. It will make our country a better, fairer place to live.
Supporters of same-sex marriage mobilized after Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas wrote that the court should reconsider the legality of same-sex marriage in a concurring opinion to the court's overturning abortion rights in June. Such a decision would affect over 500,000 married same-sex couples nationwide. But Wednesday saw a giant step forward in protecting those marriage rights. The Respect for Marriage Act is the result of months of negotiating by Republican and Democratic senators like Kyrsten Sinema.
The bipartisan support we've garnered in the Senate today proves this issue isn't a matter of one party being right or the other party being wrong. This issue is bigger than angry tweets and bombastic fundraising emails. This is about ensuring American families who share the ideals of all marriages, love, devotion, and sacrifice, can continue to count on the basic rights and responsibilities that come with their marriages.
If signed into law, the Senate bill would require the federal government to recognize any marriage that was legal in the state it was performed. However, it would not block states from banning same-sex marriages if the conservative-leaning Supreme Court allows them to do so. Republican Senator Thom Tillis, who also helped negotiate the bill, pointed out that religious liberty is still protected within it.
The bill also makes clear that no religious organization will be required to provide any services for the celebration of same-sex marriage. Put together, the Respect for Marriage Act essentially preserves the status quo we've had in our country for the last 7 years since the Supreme Court ruling.
A similar bill passed in the House in July with the support of 47 Republicans, along with all of the chamber's Democrats.
The bill is passed.
The bill will have to jump through several more procedural hoops in the Senate before going back to the House for final approval.
A day after former U.S. President Donald Trump announced plans to seek re-election in 2024, launching an early bid to become the Republican nominee in an effort to preempt potential rivals, one of the most prominent donors in the Republican Party said he would no longer support Trump. Blackstone CEO Stephen Schwarzman, who had been one of Wall Street's biggest supporters to Donald Trump's election campaigns, said that it was time for new party leadership and plans to back a different Republican candidate for the White House.
I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States.
Trump made his announcement a week after U.S. congressional elections in which his party underperformed expectations. Several Trump-backed candidates lost midterm House and Senate races.
We had a big day today.
And those who echoed his false claims about the 2020 election were defeated in key contests. Still, the businessman-turned-politician remains the top choice of Republican voters for the 2024 race in recent opinion polls. And Stanford professor and political scientist Francis Fukuyama says, despite hand-wringing in the GOP, Trump will likely win the Republican nomination.
I think that he will be the nominee. It's going to be very difficult, given the passion with which his base reveres him, for anybody else to run. But, you know, I think the Republican Party is really in a lot of trouble either way, because I think it's actually going to be hard for him to win the presidency if he is the nominee.
Another potential headwind for Trump this time around, a new media landscape. Media mogul and former Trump loyalist Rupert Murdoch has reportedly warned Trump his media empire will not back his attempt to return to the White House. The Wall Street Journal's editorial board wrote on Monday the GOP and the country would be best served if Trump stepped aside. And the New York Post, also controlled by Murdoch, covered Trump's 2024 bid with the headline buried on the front page that was more of a slight. Florida man makes announcement. And it's not just Murdoch-owned papers. Fukuyama says a change in the way the media covers Trump could shake up the former president's playbook.
The media is probably going to cover him in a different way. You can already see that just in the days since the election, where, you know, in 2016, everybody was bending over backwards to be even-handed and to give him the benefit of the doubt when he said something really crazy. I don't think they're going to do that anymore.
Too much chaos.
Meanwhile, in another potential sign of his waning influence, on Wednesday, top U.S. Senate Republican Mitch McConnell, whom Trump has publicly criticized, held off the first challenge in his nearly 16-year reign as party chief, despite Trump's repeated calls for McConnell's ouster.
Despite a barrage of warnings from the nation's biggest retailers about what they expect to be a soft holiday shopping season, U.S. consumers, at least for now, continue to spend. U.S. retail sales came in stronger than expected in October, rising a solid 1.3%, as households stepped up purchases of a range of goods despite persistently high inflation. Claire Tassin is a retail and e-commerce analyst.
So today's October U.S. retail sales report just shows the ongoing resilience of the U.S. consumer. U.S. shoppers continue to absorb higher prices, particularly in gas and groceries, and continue to spend on discretionary items as well. At the same time, we know that U.S. shoppers are leaning on savings and credit card debt in order to continue to afford these higher prices. So seeing inflation start to come down is absolutely necessary for continued resilience among consumers.
And there might be signs of just that. Recent inflation reports have shown price pressures beginning to ease. Possible evidence that the campaign by the U.S. Federal Reserve to fight inflation might finally be bearing fruit. That trend, combined with Wednesday's retail sales report, has some economists starting to voice cautious optimism that the economy could avoid an anticipated recession next year, or experience only a mild downturn. Still, in the short term, the traditionally strong holiday shopping season could be challenging, Tassin says, with consumers searching for deals.
When we're surveying consumers about the upcoming holiday season, they're telling us that they're hoping to keep their spending relatively flat from 2021, which does mean that people will be getting less bang for their buck.
The National Retail Federation forecast that holiday sales would grow between 6% and 8% this year, down from 13.5% in 2021.
U.S. stocks closed down Wednesday, with the target of investor angst being, well, Target, after the retailer became the latest to warn of a pullback in consumer holiday spending. The Dow closed down marginally, while the S&P lost more than 0.8%, and the Nasdaq shed more than 1.5%. Retail stocks slumped broadly along with Target, which also saw its third-quarter profit cut in half. Lorene Gilbert is CEO of Wealthwise Financial Services.
I think the difference in Target and what we saw is that they didn't have as much success in cost containment as those input costs have increased, and therefore profit margins becoming slimmer, whereas you can contrast that to Walmart that has done a better job as far as cost containment. Cost containment on increased prices from their vendors and being able to hold down the line with their vendors so that they can maintain their profit margins.
Despite Target's sales warning, data showed that U.S. retail sales increased more than expected in October. That may be hopeful news for Estée Lauder, which agreed to buy U.S. fashion label Tom Ford for $2.8 billion, its biggest deal yet. The deal gives Estee Lauder apparel as a new revenue stream and makes Ford, who intends to stay on through the end of 2023, a billionaire. Elsewhere in retail, shares of Lowe's rose 3% after the home improvement company raised its annual profit forecast, saying higher mortgage rates were keeping consumers from buying new homes and renovating their existing properties instead.